Imagine one evening you're just chilling, going home from work, you're in the metro, and suddenly a bunch of armed dudes just start frantically building a wall through your city, dividing it in two for half a century. The sudden appearance of the Berlin Wall came as a surprise to many in Berlin, as everyone has seen the division of Berlin as a temporary post-war measure. Thus, the location of the border in the city was to some point arbitrary, as no one actually expected it to last that long in the first place. But now, the Berlin Wall has literally cemented the concept and was here to stay. A major problem was the fact that this temporary border, among other things, was crossing the metro system, which was now cut between East and West Berlin. Some parts of the city, as a result, were completely cut off from each other without any convenient transportation in between them. This problem has more or less persisted for 2 decades, until the government of West Berlin finally decided that enough was enough and they needed to close the gap. But they didn't want to build just any metro like some normies, because truly successful people don't build metros, they build gadget-bahns. A gadget-bahn is basically an overcomplicated transport network whose purpose, in the end, in reality, turns out to be more of a tourist attraction rather than an actual efficient transport system. An example of such a system would be something like a monorail, which admittedly looks pretty cool, but is an absolute nightmare to maintain. In most cases, including Berlin, it would have been much easier and much faster, much cheaper to build a conventional rail metro, which Germany had plenty of experience with. Instead, they have opted for building a magnetically levitating train, also known as just maglev. So after agreeing that this was somehow apparently a good idea, Berlin started building the line in 1983 and testing it in 1984. For several years, they were testing the new train cars without passengers, at some point even successfully launching one of the trains through the wall of the terminal station. Eventually, after a couple more years of testing, the authorities were finally satisfied with their new deadly roller coaster and gave a green light to open it to passengers. And thus, after 8 long years in construction and testing and a ton of money spent, the Berlin M-Bahn finally opened its doors to passengers, only to close them 13 days later to never open again. Wait, what? A problem was, while the fancy levitating metro system was being built, Berlin itself has seen some unexpected changes. The changes were, of course, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the subsequent reunification of Germany itself. As a result, by the time the Berlin M-Bahn has opened, not only was it unnecessary, as Berlin was now unified, it was actually, ironically, in the way of the efforts to rebuild the old U-2 line whose platforms and stations it was occupying. Imagine 8 years, and it closes in less than 2 weeks. In fact, 2 months after its grand opening, it was already being disassembled. And disassembled it was, to the point where you won't even find traces of it. The authorities initially thought about using parts of the track produced for the system for other purposes. One of those ideas was to build an airport shuttle in the Schönefeld airport. The Schönefeld airport wasn't exactly keen on the idea, and it's understandable. Maglevs as a technology in general haven't really caught up in the world, aside from some notable exceptions. Today, the Berlin M-Bahn only exists in old photos and videos, and the original U-2 line, whose stations and platforms it occupied, has since been restored to its former capacity and is now serving passengers without being cut in two. Well, except for all the times when it is cut in two for repairs, which is like most of the time. And that would be it for today. Whoa! What is that? Is that my last video? Look at that thumbnail. That looks pretty interesting. Is that like the moon getting blown up or something? Sheesh! No, I would click on that if I were you. That looks pretty promising. Just saying. Maybe you should, just click on it. Just a little bit.